it's very interesting to see how a canon of classics develops. It's games that, and you know, this must have been the way that, I don't know, the canon of Western literature began to develop. It's just things that you read that you just then can't get out of your mind and you really want to find again. And there are so many that, you know, come and then they go. And you hear about them, and or you read the book, or you play the game, whatever it is, and then you never think about it again. You never really want to think about it again. Or somebody reminds you of it, yes. And then there are ones that people demand to have again. And so Myst also, like Monkey Island, is available for the iPad now, and you know is constantly sort of resurrected. It's very beautiful. It's a puzzle game of sort of wandering around, exploring an environment. There's one puzzle, I remember a friend at university describing this game to me and saying, you have to play it. There's a puzzle where you have to go into a library and look up the shapes of constellations. Then you have to find the constellations in the sky and note down what the latitude and longitude is, and then that latitude and longitude means something somewhere else. And I just thought, this sounds incredible. Actually, it is interesting thinking about that. I feel like with all these things, I had always felt that there was a future beyond what currently existed. And I still feel that to an extent. But I remember hearing about that Myst, and that there was a library full of books and you could actually pick up the books and look inside them. What is it that is good about games? I think it is something about the thing that I always wanted to do with children's books when I read them, which was to be able to walk into that fantasy world for real. You know, to actually go through the wardrobe into Narnia, actually walk into the TARDIS and come out in a different world, all of those things. And I feel like games just keep pushing and pushing and pushing at the possibility that you could walk right through, or at least have the full sensation that, you know, you've sent a part of yourself into this game's world. And there's still not really, there's not a game out there where you can literally go into a library and pull down every book on the shelf and read it as if it were a real book. But I feel like it'll happen eventually. I think somebody's going to hook up Project Gutenberg. You know about Project Gutenberg, right? Like with all the books on the internet. Someone's going to hook up Project Gutenberg to their game and just have a library of the classics in their game. Why has nobody done that yet? I should do that. Okay, moving on. Other games at other epochs of my life. I played this one a lot when I was working as a lawyer in Manhattan. Diablo 2. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was. This is probably my only ever brush with what you might call games addiction. I was living in Manhattan. I was there in 2001. I saw the Twin Towers falling as I was standing in my office conference room. What people forget about that is that it didn't just last a single day. The fire burned underneath the towers for about 6 months, sort of smouldering. And every time the wind blew from south to north across the island, you could smell the smell of it over the whole island. And this game, at that moment in my life, was very helpful to me. I used to come home from work, put on the air conditioning, play this game, and 4 hours would just vanish. And it was like I'd been somewhere else. And for a while, I couldn't stop playing it. And then I gave up my job and moved back to the UK and went and did a creative writing masters. And once I was there, it just sort of vanished. You know, the whole pull of the game just went away. So this is the answer I always give people when they say, oh, but games addiction, games addiction. And I'm just like, well, actually, it's not games addiction. It's not that the game is like, you know, the game, unlike cocaine, doesn't have anything in it that produces a physiological reaction that makes it, that will give you withdrawal symptoms. It's that it's a place to go if your life is quite shit for whatever reason. And it becomes a problem if playing the game so much stops you from making your life less shit. But actually, at a certain point, I'm not sure that I think it was probably quite a healthy response. You know, I spent a few months playing that game a lot, and I did other things to make my life better, nicer. And then when it went away. Anyway, that's my view on that. So now we start to get into games that I made. So yes, I left my life of corporate law. I came back to England, I did a master's, I started to write my first novel, and then I started to work on a game called Perplexity, which I have a thing to show you, but it's not very informative, so I won't bother. It's just the sort of the front page of our website. Perplexity was an alternate reality game. That is, well, maybe I'll say very briefly how I got involved in this game. I had become, whilst I was writing my first novel, I became re-obsessed with Masquerade, which I mentioned right at the beginning. I went and got myself a new copy of Masquerade. I bought Bamber Gascoigne's book about how Masquerade happened. It's a very good book, actually. People went mad. People went totally doolally and became convinced that, you know, Kit Williams was sending them messages through the newspaper and all sorts of... It's amazing. And I thought maybe I was brewing a novel about this period of Britain and about this madness. Actually, I don't think a novel about that is a bad idea. But anyway... and cut a long story short, I happened to mention to a friend that I had become re-obsessed with this game, and he just went, oh, if you like Masquerade, I met somebody at a party last night you have to talk to. And he had met someone who had said to him, I'm doing an online version of Masquerade, basically, or like an online game inspired by Masquerade. And they were looking for a writer, and they hadn't found any writer who really knew who could write and understood what they were trying to do. And I did them a couple of tests, and then I got the job, and that was my first job in games writing, because I loved this stuff. I don't know, my experience of my whole life has been, you just have to let yourself love what you love, and then people who get you will find you, you know, and just be open about it, and your people will find you in the weirdest possible ways. So I worked in this game for 4 years. We had about 1 million players at our height. An alternate reality game is a game which, like Masquerade, both happens online and in the real world. So the people of Perplexity had lost their cube. This happens, of course. And this cube was buried somewhere in the UK, and if you dug it up and found it and brought it to us, we would give you £100,000. So an incentive. We had a lot of players, we had a great deal of fun making it. There was a sort of online story which I wrote, which you had to follow to be able to work out all the clues, because you had to kind of work out who had taken it and why and where they'd put it in order to be able to find out where it had been buried. We ended up, the game ended up being cancelled because the founder of the company thought that he had an idea which would be even more successful and lucrative, when we all just laughed at this, but it turned out that he was right, and he made Moshi Monsters. I've made a lot of sort of educationally games. I tend to make games that... I don't think I've ever made a game that was just purely for entertainment and wasting your time. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I don't seem to be drawn in that direction. So I made a game called La Mappa Misteriosa for the BBC. Shall I? Oh no, you probably won't be able to see it anyway. La Mappa, M-A-P-P-A, Misteriosa, M-I-S-T-E-R-I-O-S-A, which is a game for the BBC to teach you Italian. It's an interactive drama. You watch along with the characters, and at a certain point the character will turn to you and say, you have to distract him, go and buy some pasta. Or whatever it is, you know. We have to hide, you go and buy our tickets for the railway. And in a weird way, and this is where I'll end, a lot of these different threads have come together in this game that I've made, which has been very successful this year, Zombies Run. Zombies, run, exclamation mark. It's, as Kate was explaining, it's a running game. You play it by running in the real world. We simulate the zombie apocalypse in your headphones. As you're going, there's people are telling you what's happening, and you're running away from zombies, and you're collecting supplies for your village, which is on the brink of starvation, so you have to go out and get stuff for them. And there's a whole ongoing story. So lots of different things around that. I suppose from Hero Quest, it has that feeling of making something where the gameplay is there in and of itself, but the story makes a meaning out of the gameplay. So just like Hero Quest was just these sort of figures and little big tokens to pick up, but I would read out to my brother going, the Lich Lord attacks, his wild eyes flashing as he wields his two-handed sword. And this would, you know, make the little kind of moving the figure. So in the same way, with the zombie game, because I have the descriptions of what's happening, that little, you know, you've picked up some batteries, zombies are chasing you, becomes really real and intense. And that's what writers can do, really. That's what we do, is to turn... This is what I say about games. Games can make you do stuff. Games motivate action in all sorts of different ways. But story gives meaning to what you're doing. Hello.
Well, hello. Can you say a bit more about the actual role of writing, the way that writing connects with this? Because I suppose I've always assumed that a lot of these games were essentially quite simple algorithms that were then technologically generated, you know. So, so what does the writer actually do? What do you produce?
Very much depends on the game.
Yeah.
Because I work... Oh, that's all right. No. Because I work mostly in more independent sector,
yeah.
I tend not to work on games where I don't have a sort of, let's say, an equity stake.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm involved in designing the game, and I design games which have got a good place for story, because that's what I like. So if you think about something like the Fighter Fantasy game book, that is really a set of very simple algorithms. You know, roll this dice, and that increases, or you know, that determines who's won and lost this fight, and then take 2 hit points off. But actually, the majority of it is writing. You know, it's great writing. I mean, you know, there's sort of the counter example is something like Tetris, where it would be ridiculous to put a story on Tetris. There is a really funny video I could show you, but I won't.
So you write a story involving these characters and scenarios, and then someone, the technician presumably, converts that story into a set of algorithms.
No.
I'm just trying to get a handle on what the writer does. You know. Yeah.
What I always say about this is that the way to make a terrible product is for one person to go first and then the other person to come in second.
Right.
And the way to make a good product is for everybody to be talking together all the way through. So what happens is, for the zombie game, let's say, as that's the one that sold 250,000 copies. So for the zombie game, me and my friend Adrian's a games designer, I'm a writer, but we both, let's say, have literacy in each other's area. So I know about games design, he knows about stories, and we talk a lot about, you know, we're constantly showing each other links and saying, you know, I really love this movie, you should see it, I really love this game, you should play it. So we have a constant back and forth, and so we know what each other's aesthetic is. So he said to me, we should make a game, we should make some kind of running game, something that will make running more fun. And I said, oh, we should do something where you're being chased by zombies. And then you have a series of questions to answer. You go, okay, so how's that going to work? You know, are you going to be constantly on the move? Does that mean that, you know, where is a story in there? Is it just that you're constantly fighting for survival? I mean, if you're being chased by zombies, there must be a reason that you're going out running. So then you say, okay, yeah, why haven't you just hidden somewhere? And then you say, okay, what is it that you're going out to get? I think our major insight, and I literally cannot remember which one of us who came up with it, which is the sign of a good team working together, was this idea that as you were going out running, you're going out to get stuff. And then you go, okay, so then we can bring in a mechanic, and we've both seen this mechanic where if you get stuff, you level up different areas of a village, you know, so you sort of give more and more batteries to the hospital until the hospital goes up to level 2 or whatever it is. And then it seemed to me that if you're doing that, then there's a very obvious story. If you're helping out a village and you're increasing its capacity, then of course you're going out every day and you're getting supplies. And then we had to talk about, okay, so how would you fit in the story? For a long time we thought that we would do sort of half an hour of radio drama, basically for each time that you went out for a run. And until I looked at the amount of writing that I was, and I went, that's insane amount of writing. And I think we can get equally as good an effect by doing short radio snippets, and then interleaving that with your music. So, you know, there are loads of different considerations, and that's what I mean by the writer being there to find a good place for the writing, and to decide what's a reasonable amount of writing to be able to put in to tell a good story without, you know, causing me to keel over in distress.